Hi, my name is Natasha Hatherall. I own Tish Tash Communications. We're one of the leading communications agency in the Middle East. We now have 3 offices in Dubai, Saudi Arabia and the UK. And in just under 12 years, we've grown to be, we've won many awards and we've grown to be a real force to be reckoned with in the industry. Everyone calls me Tash. No one really calls me Natasha, apart from my parents when I've been bad. Yes, even in my 40s. In terms of me, I think it's honest to say that I never expected to be where I am today. I believe that life has a way of getting you to where you need to be, even if it is a little bit unexpected. For me, I'd had a really big corporate career, and after a long time working in the UK and the Middle East, I thought I was going to freelance and go to yoga and have all this spare time when I set up on my own nearly 12 years ago. Fast forward, and we have over 50 amazing women in our team, over 100 clients we represent in the region, and it's more beyond my dreams of anything I ever thought I would achieve. But that's one of the reasons why I love Dubai and the UAE, because anything is possible, the opportunities are endless, and I'm super grateful for everything I've been given here. In terms of me today, when I started out, I just wanted to do good work for people. Did I think that I would be an advocate for women in the workforce and an advocate for women's health? It was never my plan, but now I think Polly, my managing director, and I, we realised how workplaces weren't really delivering to women in the working environment, and that was really holding women back. It ultimately, if we really want to look towards giving women equality, and being able to stand side by side our male counterparts, our differences need to be appreciated and recognised, and hence I've made it my mission business-wise to create an environment where women can flourish, their differences are understood, and we provide an environment where that's all possible. And obviously a big part of that is focusing on women, what makes them different, their health and their needs. I mean, sometimes I don't feel so unstoppable, but I think that's part of the journey. And I think for me, learning, I think sometimes it can seem overwhelming, and you think, okay, I'm just one person, what difference can I make? And I think in terms of with my business, I realized that okay, I am just one person and I am just one company, but potentially I have the chance to create difference for all those that work for me. So, I have the chance to, impact the careers of the women that work for me, and through making changes in the workforce, to policies on women's health. And so I think to me, realizing that even a small difference can create a change. And then a lot of the things that we've done in our business around true flexibility for working women, and flexibility for everybody. So a lot of my team, they have agreed work hours where they drop their kids at school, then they leave and go and do pickup, and then some of them just work the mornings, others they'll go home and carry on working, or they'll work some of the evening. We've adopted working hours to meet the needs of their lives, and so they can have a family and they can have children. And the reality is, that a lot of my team have been with me 8 years, 9 years, even 10 years. It's if you provide an environment where women can truly try and have the best of a family and a career, you get loyalty, but also they want to deliver. They do a phenomenal job because they're being aided to kind of live the best life they can live, and that difference all adds up. I think for me, one of the key things that I've kind of found sort of to get to where I am today, I think I'm actually quite a shy person, and I'm quite introverted, even though I work in communications and a very extrovert industry. And I think things really started to step change for me in COVID, when I launched, I think one day, it was very early on in COVID, and I had a bit of a meltdown on social media. I think 80% of our clients had cancelled contracts, and I think like a lot of business owners, we were worrying about what this meant for us. And I just had, writing's always been my outlet. I love writing, and I chose to I had a bit of a just outpoured it all on Instagram, on my stories. And then all of a sudden everyone was so taken aback by my searing honesty. Everyone was probably worrying about going bankrupt, losing their business, how are they going to, pay their staff. But I think very few of us were saying that. And I think generally, we're not very good at kind of being honest about sort of, difficult things. And I ended up for 2 years writing my COVID diary, which went on to win 2 awards. And I made it my mission to probably say all the things that we were all thinking, but none of us wanted to say. And the reaction to that level of honesty, openness and transparency was phenomenal. Obviously, it resonated in a time where we needed it. And I think if one of the things we've learned through COVID is very much, for that authenticity, we love to see see the people behind brands, and we love to understand their stories, and that sort of you buy people. And so I think in terms of me, that was never my plan. It really was totally accidental having a breakdown on social media, but I think it really resonated with others, be them business owners or employed, because it's good for them to see obviously how how the reality was. From there, I've kind of become a bit of a voice for open sort of an honesty, and I've gone on to share a lot of other things about my life, be it mental health, which obviously was very tied to COVID, but also the reality is a lot of us are kind of struggling with mental health, pre-COVID and after. I've also shared very honestly about the loss of my daughter at birth, which obviously was it's something that I wouldn't wish anybody to go through, but it really is. It's been very life-changing for me, as you can imagine. I've also, then talked about ongoing, we've done lots of IVF. I've talked about IVF. I've talked about fertility. And now, obviously, I find myself in a situation where perimenopausal, having no living children, and that's a new journey too. So for me, this is the conversations we're all having with our friends and our colleagues, and I've kind of made it my mission to really let's talk about the things that really affect us as women. It is like we're all just trying to juggle work the best we can. We're all, trying to have the best health we can. But the reality is, it is, it's a busy world. It's overwhelming. Throw in like the overwhelming world of social media and digital as well. And I think we're all doing the best we can in a very, very cluttered world. And I think I've just chosen to try and be a voice that shows people that life isn't perfect. We're all doing the best we can, and you'll end up in situations that you never ever think you're going to be in. And you don't always think you're going to get out of bed again or take another step because it's so bad, but you do, and you end up on a different path, and and you do find where you're supposed to be. I think, being honest, I've not always put my health as a priority. The nature of me is I try and make sure everyone else is okay, and I'm like running around, be it family, friends, colleagues, and so I put myself at the back of the queue. And that's something that I still today am doing a lot of work on personally, realizing, that old adage of, you put your oxygen mask on first. I think that's something that resonates with me, because I've got to get better at that still. But I think ultimately, if you want to be there for your family, your children, your spouse, even, your friends, you have to put your health first. And I think that for me has been a real journey. I think mental health in particular, I think, that is utmost importance, and I think we'll all struggle with that at one time or another. But I definitely think, you have to put your health, even small changes. And I'm very all or nothing in life. So it's either like I'm kind of, if I take up fitness, I'll go to I took up Pilates and I did like 130 classes in 2 months. And, versus I've kind of had to then rein myself back thinking, okay, Tash, you don't have to do 130 classes in 2 months. If you go twice a week, that's good enough. So I'm trying to be a bit less all or nothing, and just, twice a week is, that, and just get moving generally. So I think small changes is the key for health. I think women are amazing. I Obviously I'm very female focused. I'm a big advocate for women, and I think we're powerful and strong, and some of the things that we have to go through as women, that is very unique. And I ultimately, I do a lot of, sort of awareness and advocacy for women in business. And my view is, in terms of the whole equality conversation, is that women, we are already as strong as men. We are equal, but ultimately we are different. And that's why the women's health agenda is so important to me, because we have to, orientate work environments to the needs of women as well, and not just in the sort of male, more masculine way of working. Ultimately, we're the only ones that can have children. We have all the kind of, what goes with that, from hormones, sort of in pregnancy, postnatally, and then, in time, we'll end up in menopause, and that provides a whole other lot of, challenges for women. And I think that until there is that realization that men and women are equal, but we are different, and we need to treat them different. I don't want to be treated the same as a man, being honest, and I don't think any of us do. We just need our needs to be met. And so whether that is through true flexibility at work, so we can, ultimately a lot of the caregiving burden is on us, be it from breastfeeding or, or school pickups or whatever that looks like to you. I think we have to have our needs met. For example, we were one of the first companies in the Middle East to launch our policies for menstrual leave and menopause leave, and also fertility leave. And the reason I did it, and it provoked a lot of headlines and a lot of chatter at the time, is because I wanted to have meaningful conversation around this, because it is what matters. It doesn't mean that we're all going to sit at home for 5 days having a period. It just means that we have that flexibility. If we're having a really, really difficult time of the month, we can sit in our pajamas. And the reality is probably 2 of my team take a menstrual day of leave a year, but they know they can do. They know that if they're really having a difficult time, they can work at home in their pajamas, or there's no pressure. They don't have to answer questions. They log it on our HR system, and it is what it is. But the reality is, how many companies are actually doing anything like that? And actually, or they're saying they're doing it, but they're not. Then you're questioned so much. You're made to feel so bad, about taking any extra leave. It's like, I don't want to answer questions. I believe if you don't trust the people that work for you, don't employ them. I think if you create an environment where that trust is given, and true flexibility, and they know that you have their back and you understand their needs and why they're different, then the rest, company performance follows. You have staff loyalty and all these things. And that, to me, is why I really chose to focus on women's health, and in a very extreme way. Only I have over 50 women working for me. We don't have any men. And it isn't because we don't love the guys. We very much do. But ultimately, I wanted to show that an environment that's created with the needs of women in mind can flourish and be at the top of its game. And that, I feel, we really are, from the amount of awards we've won, the caliber of clients we have, and the number of accolades. And, I feel, it wasn't my path, but I really feel like this is where I'm meant to be. I think for me, women's health broadly, obviously, is a passion area of mine. I think the more I've looked into and done research, there's so much we don't even think about. I think for me, obviously, your life experiences dictate, I think, where, your passions and what where you want to kind of put your energy. And I think for me, losing a child is something that I could never have comprehended, and that's an area where I've ended up sorry, I've ended up playing a really significant role in the community. We're now about to organise our first, it's our 3rd year of organising Baby and Child Loss Awareness Day in the Middle East. 3 years ago, when we started it, it was 4 or 5 communities that came together, and it was something that it's been done around the world, but the idea of doing it in the Middle East was a little bit kind of controversial. We didn't know how it would be received, but ultimately, so we chose to do it as a full day of sessions online, and now we have we have a website, we have a whole committee, and we're about to have our 3rd day this year, which is bigger and bolder than ever. And I think about this, and when we first started 3 years ago, no media wanted to cover it, no one wanted to talk about child loss, infertility, all of these kind of topics that relate around baby and child loss. In the second year, I think we had 8 media did features and covered it. So I think little by little, the more we're talking about it, the more we're putting it out there, however comfortable. Child loss is probably one of the most uncomfortable topics you can talk about. I guarantee you it's the worst conversation killer ever. Having been there, it is. I always say I've lost friends because of it, that couldn't deal with, dealing with me or didn't know what to say and they just avoid me. So I think if we talk about things and we put them out there in the public domain, it becomes easier. And yeah, it's never going to be easy for someone that goes through it, but just knowing that you're in a space where you can talk about it, there are people that, understand and that are there, the resources to go to. I think it's really, really powerful. Me and the collective, Love Through Loss, we're working on plans for this year. We're actually starting to go through the process of creating a not-for-profit here in the region, which is something that, all of us feel very strongly that we want to create a legacy for this that is beyond just us, and we want it to go on. So that's something that I'm really, really passionate about. And on the offshoot of that, obviously we're doing lots of work in the area of fertility. Egg freezing is a massive buzzword right now. We're all talking about it. Obviously there's been lots of legislation changes, and I think for me, particularly working with a team of 20-something, early 30-something women, I think having, we do lots of training about fertility, egg freezing, even menopause. I think it's really important that we all know, what options we have. I think if my learning, and something that I would like any woman to take away from me, is don't always think you've got time. I've had an amazing, amazing career. I've done brilliant things and I'm really proud of everything that I've done. But I did. I always thought I'd have time to have a family, and I left it late. And then, when it came down to it, it wasn't as easy because, the older you are, it does get more difficult. There's egg quality issues and things like this. And so I'm now a big advocate for, look at your options, look at egg freezing, track your fertility, don't just bury your head in the sand. And so I think, for me, the whole area of, fertility, infertility, and raising awareness for this is a real passion for me. The things we need to talk about, openly and honestly, are fertility. Fertility rates are dropping. There's lots of reasons for it, from environmental to stress. And I think, women, we need to be open and honest about that. I think the fact we're having conversation now about menopause and perimenopause is great, because ultimately we're all going to go through it, and now there's a lot more awareness, and it's not just women thinking they're going crazy because they can't think straight or they're not feeling, it's having, and the number of women leaving the workforce because of menopause is frightening. Exceptional women with brilliant experience. And I think if these are the things we need to understand, so we don't lose amazing talent. We're giving everybody the right environment to meet their needs, and so I think for me, in terms of the future, I think looking at women and what make women different, particularly from the health and the family perspective, it's really key to kind of going forward. I think sustainability obviously is a hot topic right now. So we have COP28 coming, and I think lots of us are really excited about that. I think sometimes people are getting overwhelmed with the whole sustainability agenda, and if it looks like you have to do all and everything, and that becomes, it's sort of financially costly, and it's just a lot to do. So I think the way I'm looking at it is very much like small differences add up. So you don't have to all of a sudden become 100% carbon neutral or make changes in one night. It could just be okay. So maybe you switch out to a water filter, rather than just using bottled water. I think with events we're thinking about how we can look at reusable bags, the type of materials we're using. We personally, we're really passionate about sustainable and clean and green brands, and so we've done a lot of work with brands in this space. We've even organised events. Oh So Ethical was an event we put together about all championing ethical kind of brands. I think so from a marketing point of view, it's something that we really want to work with brands who want to advocate in this space. But I think my view is small changes add up. So we can't, like with everything, even with the female agenda, it's like we can't change the world overnight, but every step forward makes a difference. I think for me, I haven't always put my health first. I've gone through, earlier in my life, I was very, very good at fitness. I was I probably was working out 5-6 times a week, and that's definitely something I really do believe, you know, physical health, mental health, it all comes together. I think, as I said, look, something that I know I am a little bit all or nothing, and so if I get into a sort of a fitness or a health, you know, regime, I try and go all guns blazing, and then I try and do too much, and then a couple of months later I can't sustain it. So something that I'm finding is that it's better to do 2 things a week, you know, and commit to them, rather than trying to do 5 things a week and then not doing them, and then you feel worse. So I think even, you know, doing 2 Pilates classes a week, or, you know, walking. I know we're really bad at walking here because, you know, a lot of things, you know, it is very warm and we don't always have, you know, like pavements and things that make it easy, but I'm trying my best to walk more, basic things, even if it is walking. You know, I installed the step counter thing on my phone, and I try and kind of at least gauge like how many steps I'm doing a day, be it around a mall, like event, you know. So I think definitely just basic getting moving really, you know, helps. And I think just realistic targets. If you set things that are too crazy, you're never going to achieve them. And I really do think as well, like, you know, particularly women getting older, I think it's really important to look at things like weightlifting, and obviously strength training is really important. So particularly as I'm getting older, I'm looking more at kind of activities that do fit with that. And I think as well, something that I've learned is, because I've got quite a busy life and I'm always on the go, sometimes my body and my, you know, sort of system can be quite overloaded, and adding in sometimes too strenuous exercise can actually be even more detrimental to my health. So you know, you have to listen to your body as well, and actually maybe walking is better for you than, you know, sort of long distance running. And I think, you know, but either just generally get moving, whatever that looks like to you in your life. I invite you all to join me at the start line at Dubai Festival City in November, and let's do the Dubai Women's Run together. Even if you're walking, you know, you don't have to run. Let's just move together. Let's, you know, be together as a community and embrace everything that makes it amazing to be a woman. See you at the start line.